G'day YouTube, NecroarcanistXIII here, with the next part of Necro Reads Strange Unsolved Mysteries by Margaret Ronan. Chapter 5, I think it is. Chapter 5? Yes, Chapter 5, Dogs with Human Brains. This will be interesting. Dumb animals, we say. Do we mean by dumb that animals can't talk, or do we mean that they are stupid? Used in either sense, the word dumb cannot apply to the dogs in this chapter. All showed almost human intelligence, and all could communicate their thoughts and opinions to humans. Jim was an English setter, the pet of hotel owner Sam Van Arsdale. For the first 4 years of Jim's life he seemed to be just an ordinary dog. Then one day in 1929, he seemed to take several giant leaps up the IQ scale. On that particular day, Van Arsdale was strolling around the hotel grounds with Jim. A variety of trees grew there, and one of them caught Van Arsdale's attention. "That elm over there looks like it's got some kind of blight," he said to himself. "I wonder if any of the other elms have caught it." To Van Arsdale's amazement, Jim broke away from his side. The dog scampered across the lawn to another elm, and came to a halt at the foot of a tree, whining and barking. When Van Arsdale examined the tree, he discovered it too had the beginnings of a blight. But how had Jim known what Van Arsdale was talking about? How had he known what tree to find? Was it just coincidence, wondered Van Arsdale? Or could it be that Jim actually knew one tree from another? Aloud he murmured, "Find a birch tree, Jim." Obediently Jim ran off, coming to a halt in front of a birch tree. Astonished, Van Arsdale forgot about coincidence and began to test the dog. Could Jim pick out a locust tree, an oak, a beech? The dog could and did. Further experiments showed he could also tell one make of car from another. Jim, it soon developed, had another talent, one which made him famous and made other people money. Van Arsdale discovered that Jim could pick the winners of horse races. He would read the names of horses scheduled to run in an upcoming race, and Jim would bark when the name of the winner was read out. When the race was run, the horse that Jim had chosen never failed to come in first. Jim could also pick winners if Van Arsdale wrote the names of the horses on slips of paper. When laid out on the floor in front of the dog, he would look them over then place his paw on his choice. Crowds came to see Jim do this trick, then many of them would rush off to place their bets. Van Arsdale, however, never bet on Jim's tips, for he did not believe in gambling. As might be expected, Jim became a celebrity. A movie company offered to star him, but Van Arsdale said no, thinking that Van Arsdale might have some secret set of signals that he passed along to the dog. Professors Durant and Dickinson of the University of Missouri asked if they might test him without Van Arsdale present. Jim was taken to the university to perform before an audience of 900 spectators. Although Jim had never heard anything but English spoken before, he had no trouble carrying out orders given in German, Spanish, and Italian. Jim's ability to understand foreign languages, however, was only part of the show. Next, the professors ordered him to go down into the audience. "Look around and find a man with a black moustache," they told the dog. Without hesitation, Jim located such a man and placed his paw on the gentleman's knee. "Find a lady in a blue dress." Jim did so just after a few minutes of searching. "Now find a little girl wearing white stockings." This took a little longer, but the dog finally found a child with such a description. The professors were impressed with Jim's abilities, and so was the Missouri state legislature. They suspended government business for a day so that Jim could perform for them. The legislators rigged up a test they felt sure Jim wouldn't be able to pass. They hired a telegrapher to tap out instructions to the dog in Morse code. Surely a dog would be confused by dots and dashes. However, the code was no riddle to Jim. When the telegrapher tapped out instructions to find a certain senator, Jim made a beeline for the right man, and the legislator gave the dog a standing ovation. As the years went by, Jim became feeble and seemed less interested in performing for curious humans. But in 1936, an election of national importance was to be held. To settle arguments among his friends, Van Arsdale asked Jim to predict the winner, the man who will be elected President of the United States. The Reader's Digest had predicted that Alfred Landon, the Republican candidate, would end up in the White House. But Jim disagreed. His choice was Franklin D. Roosevelt by a landslide. But this was his last prediction, and like all the others he had made, it was right on target. Was Jim psychic? Did he read the minds of those humans who plagued him with questions? If so, this would account for his uncanny skill and ability to understand any language and code. There seems to be no other explanation. There is even less explanation for the case of the talking dog, for two men in Pittsburgh swore they met such a dog on July 29, 1908. The two men were out for a walk on Lincoln Avenue when an ordinary black dog trotted up to them, wagging its tail. "Good morning," said the dog. Aghast, the two men looked at each other. Was one of them a ventriloquist, playing a joke? "Not at all," said the dog. "I speak for myself." With that, the dog went on his way. Stunned and speechless, the men watched, and one of them suddenly became angry. "It's a trick," he shouted. "Let's grab that animal and find out how it's done." Leaving his friend, he ran after the dog. What happened next was reported to the policeman on the beat by his friend. The man who had chased the dog was too hysterical to make any sense. He chased the dog, officer, and caught up with it. He was going to grab it when a creature said, "Don't touch me," but he did anyway, caught hold of one of its legs. Then he let out a terrible scream. The dog got away, but look at my friend's hand. He pried open the clenched fingers of his hysterical friend's hand, and a livid mark, patterned with an etching of dog hairs, was burned into the palm. The last word in stories about weird and wonderful dogs belongs to Chris, owned by George Wood of Rhode Island. Just for fun, in 1953, Wood decided to teach Chris to count by saying numbers out loud, to tapping the dog's paw on a chair a corresponding number of times. Chris proved to be an astoundingly quick pupil, for in no time at all, he learned how to count up to 1,000,000, then went on to learn addition, subtraction, and cube root problems. He also learned to spell by putting his paw on cards marked with letters of the alphabet. Like Jim's, Chris's fame soon spread, and like Jim, he became the subject of a number of scientific tests. Research specialists from universities in Rhode Island, South Carolina, and Delaware put him through his paces. For one test, the scientists thought up a problem so complicated they believed only a computer could solve it, but Chris came up with the correct answer in only 4 minutes. How did he do it? The specialists asked each other. "Smart dog," Chris spelled out with his alphabet cards. "Brain power." And that is the end of chapter 5. My throat is getting pretty red raw at the moment, but hopefully this turns out pretty well, because this chapter and the last two I have recorded at least 3 different times in the last 2 days, and all of them have failed in one way or another, whether through glitch or an accident. But yeah, I'm also hoping to try and finish recording these 3 and the next 3 to catch up schedule as quickly as possible, for I have just under an hour before I have to get ready to go to work. And so even if I have these recorded and ready to go by the time I leave, I'll be able to upload by the time I come home, which should keep me occupied for a little bit. And then of a Sunday, I'm scheduled to visit a friend and help organise a Dungeons and Dragons game. Then The weekend after that, I'll be working an extra day, so I'll have less time to record. And then the weekend after that is a natural culture heritage festival called the Unconformity, and I'll be working all day through then. So yeah, I want to try and get as much done as I possibly can. But, well, seeing as I've managed to create 3 different videos in the last 40 minutes, I should be able to get this done as quickly as possible. Anyway, until next time, this is NecroarcanistXIII signing off. Good night, YouTube, and stay classy.